Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about how to speak confidently in meetings. As someone who struggled with this many times, especially at the beginning of my career, I want to share with you today different kind of tips and tricks that really helped me overcome that fear of speaking up during meetings. Before we go any further though, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more tech and coding related content. And as always, shout out to some of these subscribers here. Thank you for your awesome comments and questions. As you know, I make all my videos based on what you are asking and what you want to see. So if you haven't already, leave in the comments some videos you want to see. Okay, let's get started. For myself, I remember when I first started my first job, it was at a startup and a really small, intimate environment where you would think you'd feel comfortable to speak up, give your ideas, your thoughts, and it really was encouraged. However, there was something that kept on holding me back. Every time I tried to speak up, my face would get red, I would start shaking, and in turn, it would make it worse. So I really had to sit down and do some research and reflecting as to what was causing this, what was causing me to be so afraid to speak up, especially in an environment that it was encouraged. The first thing I started to do was to take small steps. I stopped putting all this pressure on myself that I needed to have these grandiose ideas or have these big speeches when we were in meetings, and rather came from the perspective of, let's take a step back and just work into this very slowly and steadily. You don't need to have these big ideas or big topics to start with, or if ever, but rather contribute in small ways. So for me, taking a small step meant having more one-on-one conversations with people that, maybe were higher up than me that I usually got intimidated with. And having these one-on-one conversations really alleviated a lot of the pressure I put on myself of, am I going to look silly? Are they going to take me seriously? All these kind of fears I had when it come to talking in a big meeting setting. The second thing I did with taking small steps is after I started meeting one-on-one with people, and a lot of times how I got to meeting one-on-one with people is honestly just asking them for a coffee. Hey, do you have any free time throughout your day to grab a 5-minute coffee or 10-minute coffee and chat? And this kind of started the ball rolling. The second thing that I did was commit to making small steps. So in morning meetings, rather than, saying nothing, just try and say one thing that comes to mind. And the more you do that, it's like a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. And in turn, it becomes almost second nature. The second tip I have for you is identify times and meetings where you have felt comfortable speaking up in the past. And what I mean by this is, for myself anyways, it was identifying, well, why did I feel comfortable speaking up in this meeting versus another meeting? And when you really take a step back to look at why that is, one thing you might find is it might be who is in that meeting. So for myself, I know I felt more comfortable speaking up more in meetings when it was with my peers versus when it was with my boss or my manager. And I'm sure that is for a lot of you too. So what I started to do was speak up more during meetings with my peers and continue using that environment to practice with speaking up. And then over time, as I got more comfortable with that, you slowly start introducing that to when you are speaking up in meetings with your managers and your bosses. The third mindset that really helped me in shifting my current mindset or past mindset was action over perfection. And what I mean by this is, if you are someone who's a perfectionist like myself a lot of times and feeling like, okay, if I don't word this properly or I maybe get too wordy, there's no point in even speaking at all. What I used to do, for example, was if I gave an idea that I had and it didn't flow as I wanted it to, I'd be so hard on myself that I would just, throughout the rest of the meeting, I wouldn't even be paying attention to the meeting. I'd be beating myself up inside. And then I realized that it's not about having this perfect answer, because I started watching some of my other peers, and some of what they were saying was definitely not perfect, but they just kept on going and going with it and providing more action over perfection. So once you really shift your mindset into, you don't need to have these perfectly curated answers or questions and really just put yourself out there, you realize that it will become, once again, more normal the more you keep on doing it. Also, as a little side note, one thing I read when I was starting out in corporate was, don't worry about what everyone else is thinking about you, because the reality is they're not thinking about you. They're too worried thinking about what you're thinking about them. And I know that's a bit wordy, but what it essentially means is a lot of times we worry about what others are thinking about us when in reality they're so worried about the same thing they don't even know what you just said or probably couldn't even repeat that. So I know it can feel like that everyone's really analyzing you and watching what you are saying, but at the end of the day, a lot of times they are so focused on what they are doing and their own things that they have going on that they'll listen to you, but they might not fully grasp what you're saying anyways. And when I realized that, it took a lot of pressure off me that, hey, it's not this, everyone doesn't have these crazy big expectations of me. They're too worried about what they're doing as well. And it kind of, because then what I did in turn also too is I started realizing, could I repeat what that other person just said? And yeah, maybe to a degree as I try and be a good listener, but I definitely wasn't monitoring how accurate is what they said or how professional it was. And, it kind of made me realize that they're doing the same with me. They're not monitoring what I'm saying. The next point I want to talk about is action over perfection. For too long, as someone who really was a perfectionist, I thought, okay, I need to have these big, grandiose topics to speak about or these ideas or they won't take me seriously. And I started realizing that will never happen. I will never have these perfect concepts or ideas, and that's human nature. So rather than waiting for that perfection to occur, which it never will, start by taking action and slowly just integrating your ideas, your comments and questions into the meetings. Also too with this, one thing I read recently, actually not recently, when I was starting my career was about how people are so consumed with what they are thinking and what they are focused on that they're not actually worried or really putting much focus onto what you're saying. So don't spend too much time worrying about how others are perceiving you, because in reality, they're too busy worrying about that too to actually be spending time worrying about you. And that took a lot of pressure off me, and I hope it will you too if you remember that when you are in a meeting setting, that people, yes, they're listening, but they're not analyzing and observing you the way you think they might be. Another thing that really helped me when I started speaking up in meetings is removing words that made me sound less confident. So things such as I think or maybe. I used to start all my sentences with this, well, I think this is a good idea, or maybe we could do this. And once you remove those and it comes to this is the direction we should be going, or taking out those maybes and I thinks made a huge difference. But also on that note, the tone of your voice when you are giving a statement, a lot of times when you are a little bit unsure, you'll end it going with a higher pitch. So for example, I think we should start our meeting at this time today versus this is the time we should start our meeting today. And you can see there, very simple example, how much of a difference the same sentence or same statement sounds when you raise your tone at the end, kind of like you're unsure, versus keep it consistent. That really helped me too with when I'm listening to myself speak, knowing that at least if I'm not confident on the inside, I sound confident, and then hopefully the actual confidence will come shortly after. My last tip is to be an advocate for others. And what I mean by this is rather than coming to the table with your own fresh ideas and concepts, just advocate and speak up and encourage when other people give their ideas. So this really takes the pressure off of having to come up with these grandiose ideas, and instead it brings it on to just kind of having some bits of sound in the sense of that's great or good idea. And it kind of gets you used to speaking up in a setting where there's other people in the room. I know for myself, as an example of this, is I had to give one of my first public talks I did, and I think it was a room of 200 or 300 people, but the talk I was giving was about 2 minutes long, so it was very short. But I was so nervous. But before the talk, we had a booth outside where people could come and engage on a one-on-one more so way with us and ask questions. This really, I can't tell you enough how this really took all my stress and anxiety about giving this talk, and it put it to ease when I started practicing, in a sense, having these one-on-one conversations. I'm like, okay, speaking isn't that bad. It's not that scary. That by the time that I actually went up on stage to give the talk, I was already so comfortable because I had been speaking in a more intimate setting with people that for whatever reason, it just came out naturally. I just felt like, these are people just like me, they have flaws just like me. They're not these big, scary, people that we put on, we perceive them to be. It made them feel more real. So if you're able to have those one-on-one conversations before you give this big speech or contribute in this big meeting, that will also help you remember that, hey, these are just normal people too. Those are some of my top tips for helping you speak up confidently during meetings or if you're giving a talk. At the end of the day though, for I would say 99% of people, it isn't a natural thing. There's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves, and we are so nervous of what other people are going to think of us that it's one of those things that, just as I mentioned, like a muscle, you need to keep on practicing and practicing, and it will get stronger over time, to a point where you'll look back and be like, wow, why was I ever scared to speak up? And it just starts coming naturally. Take small steps and you will get there. Thank you everyone for watching this video. As always, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more tech and coding related content, and I will see you all soon. Thanks everyone.